Good evening. My name is Nehemiah, and I'm a servant of the Most High King. In fact, that's my job. I'm the cupbearer to King Artaxerxes, the Persian ruler, the King of Kings, he calls himself. He's the son of Xerxes. You may remember Xerxes was involved with and married to Esther, that beautiful queen who did so much to save her people. And as one of those people, and in that lineage, I serve my king with distinction and with joy. Now, being a cupbearer to the king it's an ominous responsibility. It's a wonderful responsibility. It's a serious responsibility. You see, if someone has something against the king, they want to kill him, the preferred way to do that would be to poison him. So I am the one who tests and tastes everything before it goes to the king to be sure he's safe. I'm his bodyguard. I'm his tester, his taster, his confidant. And as such, I have direct access to him and high responsibility. You know, living in the court of the king, as he says, like I told you, the King of Kings, is a very good assignment. It's a very lovely place to be. But one day my brother came from Jerusalem for a visit. And I asked him, "How are things in Jerusalem?" And he looked at me, and my brother's name is Hanani. His name means, grace, gracious. My name means one who brings consolation. Our father's name, Hakaliah, meant God is hidden, because you see, he grew up in a time when there was little hope, and so he named his sons Graciousness, my brother, and God brings consolation, my name. But my brother, when I asked him, "How are things in Jerusalem?" he said, "The walls are torn down, the gates are destroyed, and we're in disgrace." My brother, whose name means gracious, and grace, says that we're in disgrace. Now, the part about the walls being torn down and broken, that wasn't news to me. I mean, that had happened 150 years before. It would be like me telling you, "Did you hear? Mr. Lincoln has been shot." You did hear that, didn't you? That's not news. Nebuchadnezzar had destroyed Jerusalem 150 years before. But what my brother was telling me is, not only is the city in shambles, and the temple in shambles, and the people without hope, but there was a rebellion led by Megabysos in the land beyond the river, it was called. And he and Sanballat and others were beginning to try to foment a rebellion against the king of Persia. And what was being said is that the people in Jerusalem were part of that plan. Don't you see, that would be a disgrace? We served our king, and to be accused of treason was unthinkable. I was greatly distressed. I was so upset that for 4 months I prayed and I fasted and I pled with God. Because you see, if our community, if Jerusalem and the temple remain destroyed, it's a mockery. People will look at us and say, "Who is your God? Look at your city. Look at your temple. If your city's in ruins, your God is weak, and you're nothing." And then to be accused of treason, that's disgrace. I'm a man of prayer. And you know, I want to say prayer should always be our first resort, not our last resort. And so I fasted and I prayed, and one day I came before the king. And he said to me, Nehemiah, something's troubling you. You're not yourself. And he says, I know you're not ill. It must be something of the heart. You see, good leaders pay attention to people around them. And, well, he might, because, you know, I might have had in my mind to poison the king, and that might have been on my conscience, but that was not it. But he picked up right away that something was not right. And so he said to me, what troubles you? I said, oh, king, how can I not be sad when my people are being accused of sedition and treason, and we're in disgrace, and the city of my fathers is in ruins? And then he surprised me. What do you want, Nehemiah? No, when the King of Kings says to you, what do you want? That's an open invitation. And at that moment, I had some choices to make. You know, life is made of choices. And when the king says, what do you want? I could have said, well, nothing. You know, I'd like a little time off. I prayed silently. Oh, I know there's a big debate. Do you kneel on one knee, both knees, stand, hands up, down? You know what? There's no wrong way to pray. And I breathed the prayer to God that I'd been praying for 4 months. Oh, God, speak through me. And I said, if it please the king. Think about that. The king had just asked me what I wanted, and I said, if it please the king. You see, being polite can get you a long ways. Being arrogant will put you down. If it please the king, send me to Jerusalem to rebuild the city. You see, I didn't just ask to go. I didn't ask for permission to leave. I said, send me. That's an official business. You see, when you and I do the ministry and the work of the King of Kings, we're on official business. I said, "O King, send me." Number 2, send me with letters of safe passage. Give me what I need to be safe and secure in what I do. 3, give me letters to Asaph, another Jewish man, the keeper of the king's forest. Interesting word. In Persian, we get that word that comes out of that, paradise. Because the trees that were growing there, it was a paradise if you lived in the desert. Send me with letters so that I can get timber to rebuild the wall and the gates and the posts. And he said, "It shall be done." Now you see, I was afraid. When he said, "What do you want?" I was afraid. But you know, when you are asked to do something and God puts it in your heart to do something, overcome your fear and move ahead. And you'll be successful. The king asked me only one thing. He said, "Set a time." And I set a time that I would go. And not only did he give me letters to go and safe passage and the keys, if you will, to the forest for materials, but he sent soldiers with me. You see, it wasn't too safe to be traveling just anywhere at any time. I learned, don't try to do it alone. When you're doing a mission, even for God, don't try to do it alone. Bring people around you. Well, I had a lot of time to think as I rode down to Jerusalem from where I was. And when I got there, I spent 3 days going about looking with my own eyes. You see, if you're going to do something great for the King of Kings, get the facts first. I didn't want hearsay. I didn't want someone else's report. I wanted to be involved myself. And so I said nothing. I just watched and looked and evaluated. Get the facts. Number 2, get a goal. And after I had the facts, I called the people together and I set a goal. And I said, let's do what? Build the wall. Have you ever been around groups that have mission statements that are pages and paragraphs long? Well, my paragraph was not a paragraph. It was not a page. My mission, my goal was very clear, very memorable. What was it? Build the wall. Now, something else I learned in Persia. If you're going to do a work, you better find out what resources you have. And what resources did I have? Well, I had letters from the king, but I had something even more important than that. I had all the people around me that were living in Jerusalem. Oh, I heard someone singing about, we have this hope. Well, the people didn't have much hope. But when I began to talk to them and say, the King of Kings has sent me to rebuild the wall, and I need your help, we built a team. Get the facts. Get a goal. Check your resources. And the richest resources that are available are God's people. And we built a team. Some people thought it was marvelous because we had rulers on the team. Those who had been used to being in charge of things, now they were mixing mortar and laying blocks and cutting wood. Right next to a merchant. Right next to someone who was a goldsmith. Next to a perfumer. We even had some of the women working on the wall. You know, when there's a great work to be done for God, it doesn't matter what your background, what your ethnicity, what your training, it all depends on your willingness. It doesn't depend on your gender. It depends on your willingness to serve the High King. And we built a team. But I'll tell you, it wasn't without challenge. Not at all. When you set out to do something for God, you can expect resistance. Have you experienced that? We started to build the wall. And here came Sanballat. Sanballat, the one who'd caused some of these problems in the beginning. And Sanballat had with him Tobiah the Ammonite. Now, Sanballat, his name, he's a Samaritan. Sanballat, Sin Baal. Sin, the god of the moon, he is the god. You see, it was a direct challenge to the worship of the mighty God of heaven. The moon god is God, his name meant. Sanballat. Tobiah the Ammonite. The Ammonites were the children of Lot and one of his daughters. Tobiah, his name means Jehovah is good. Well, that's a good name, but he wasn't a good man. Sanballat, Tobiah, and then they had with them Gershom, the Arab. Gershom, well, there's an interesting name. It means rain. You ever noticed when you start out to do something great, there's always someone there to rain on your parade? They came up against us and they said, "You're rebelling against the king, and we're going to report you. You can't rebuild this wall. We know what you're doing. You're rebelling." Well, they were the ones who were rebelling. You see how the devil tries to turn everything upside down and make good bad and bad good. I said, "Oh no. We are doing what the king sent us here. It is written." And I showed him the scroll. You know, there's safety in that. It is written by the king. You can take that word. They mocked us. Tobiah said, "You're going to bring these dead stones back to life? Why, if a fox would run on it, the wall that you're building would fall down." Now let me stop here for just a moment. Have you ever wondered how rocks could live or die? Well, the rocks that we had, the stone we had, was limestone. And the way we built the ancient wall was we'd put down limestone, several layers, put together with pitch. And then we would put a layer of wood planking in there, and then more stone. Now, when the city was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar, he burned the wall. What happens to limestone when you heat it? Do you know? It crumbles. It dies. And so our antagonists were saying, are you going to bring back to life? These stones are dead. Your hope is dead. And we said, no. Our hope is in our God, whom we will worship in this place. And you can't stop us. And they threatened us. Have you ever heard of having plan B? Well, we had plan B, C, D. We were ready. And so I said to my men, you'll carry a trowel in one hand, a working tool in one hand, and a sword or a spear in the other. Plan B. Plan C, I stationed men with trumpets all around the city wall. And when the trumpet would blow in one place, we knew that's where the trouble was. We would all go there. You see, we were supporting each other. That's how to build. Then they tried to intimidate us again. When that didn't work, they said to me, they sent me messages. They said, come down to the plain of Ono and discuss with us what's going on. You know what my answer was? Oh, no. I'm not going to the plain of Ono. I'm not coming down. I'm doing a great work for God. I don't have time to pull away and talk. I'm doing God's work. And the people did work. Oh, you see, the richest get the facts. Check your resources. Build a team. I did that with God's graciousness. My men and I, you see, when rulers had come before, and I'm considered a ruler, they were paid tribute. I had food brought in, and I fed the people. If people are fed spiritually, they'll lift the load. I fed the people. I went out and I drew my own water. I worked right with them. I identified with them. I gave them work to do right next to where they lived. I let them work in their own sandals, if you will. And we prayed and we worked. And in 52 days, the wall was done. Get the facts. Set a goal. Check your resources. The fourth thing I did was I took old business and turned it into new business. You see, I had learned some skills in the courts of the king, and I just took those and put them into the new work. That's what God calls us to do. Oh, yes, we become new people when we follow Him, but we can still take the skills and the learnings and the abilities that we had before, and we can take old business and make it into new business. Be bold. Be visible. But more than everything, saturate everything you do with prayer. That's what we did. Now, I wasn't through. When the wall was finished, I had come to help rebuild the wall and to rebuild Jerusalem, and that we did. But I also helped rebuild worship. I helped rebuild the family. I helped rebuild the observance of God's day. You see, I started out serving food to the king. And then God called me to serve hope and consolation to His people. And I did. And I was successful. And I stayed in Jerusalem for quite a while, and then I left and I went back to the courts of the king. to serve him. And then I came back to Jerusalem. But I didn't come as a servant necessarily. When I came back, I came as a judge. And you know what I found? I found Tobiah living in the temple courts. And I threw him out. And I found the son of the high priest married to the daughter of Sanballat. And I threw them out. There is one who came to Jerusalem to build the people. He talked of being a servant of the Most High. And he went back to the king. But he will come again as judge. We all have been given the chance to build Jerusalem. Not the old Jerusalem, but the new Jerusalem. We are living stones in that city. And we serve the Most High King. And he will come again. And my challenge to you is, and to me, will we be servants of that King to bring hope and consolation to people who need it? Will we bond together to do God's work and will so that we can celebrate and be part of that new Jerusalem? Nehemiah. God brings consolation and hope, and serving him brings hope to everyone. Will you join me in prayer? God, our Father, you have stepped down to this earth to give us hope. Help us to be true servants of your hope, to build your Jerusalem, your people, and to bring life to dead stones and hope to cold hearts and deliverance and security through him whose name we praise, our Most High King and God, whom we worship. Amen and amen.